Today we're going to be jumping into Bitcoin and Ethereum and also give you guys some insights on a variety of altcoins. You don't want to miss it. My name is Paul Barrow. Welcome back into Tech Path. Let's get started. I do want to thank our sponsor, and that is Coinbase. This is a place where you guys can get into your first crypto trade. And the cool thing about Coinbase is when you do it and you sign up through our link, you can get up to $200 in crypto just for doing a trade. So whether you like Bitcoin, Ethereum, altcoins, whatever that might be, if you're brand new to crypto, get over to Coinbase and set up your account today. Let's go into it. I want to bring in a trader. You guys will probably recognize this guy. And this is Paul Sampson. He comes over from DataDash. We've talked about DataDash before on the show, but Paul, welcome in.
Hey, Paul. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here. It's Paul Squared today.
There you go. I like it. So, hey, we're going to be talking a lot about Bitcoin, Ethereum. We'll get into some of the altcoins. So for all of you guys watching right now, make sure and stick around for that. We'll actually chart all the way into Avalanche, SWE, and all sorts of good tokens for you guys to take a look at. But I want to open up with Bitcoin, Paul. And if you look at the breakout that we're seeing right now, a little above 107K, momentum seems to be building. Whether or not we see another all-time high, I think that's still in the cards, maybe for the month of June. And I think there's a lot of scenarios that are playing into this. Obviously, we've seen macro pressure. We've seen all sorts of political pressure. And the big one, of course, is how the regulatory framework is lining up, especially around the stablecoin bill. When you look at where Bitcoin is right now and what it could look like over the next couple of weeks, what do your charts show for Bitcoin?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be happy to share these charts with you here. So Bitcoin specifically, as you were stating, has gone through many moons with some of the news catalysts across the last few months, right? And really the last few years, especially with the ETF landscape and everything you just mentioned. And of recent, we came up earlier this year and put in this high around $110,000 in January, and then got a really decent pullback here into these regions here, kind of all wrapped around the tariff woes. And then one thing I point out pretty heavily is, especially when we were coming up to this region, this was when the fear and greed at the time. It was very heavy greed as we were coming into this peak euphoria. There was very big positivity around the new administration coming in and all the reserves for crypto. And then as we kind of made our way down, obviously we had some negative things affecting it. And then at the very low here, it was like at peaks again with the big fears around the tariffs and everything. And both of these, we basically put in two technical, setups basically. And it's just a really simple, as you can see it right here, clear as day, especially wrapped around some of the leverage that you were just kind of pointing out. This market, unfortunately, is really, heavy on the leverage as we go here. But we came up, we took the highs here. And when you get a sweep of those highs like that, especially on with some of that really heavy fear and everybody really positive and leaning one way, you tend to get a little pullback and a cool down. Then we did the exact same thing down here where we had a nice low put in place around that 74,000, came down and you swept that region here. And then we ended up just running it all the way back up. And you effectively have just been taking lows and taking highs here over the last few months. And for me personally, as far as even just from the last jolt out of the 48K region, back when we had the carry trade worries back here, the overall sentiment and the overall direction, I think, for the Bitcoin chart is still to the upside. I think that short term and as far as like a pullback or anything like that would go, I think that there's some potential to come back down towards this like yearly open area. You can see I've only got two areas marked on the chart here for me. So not getting too crazy with over indicators or anything like that, just kind of breaking it down on a high level. And the yearly open for this year is a big region, and you can see how well it's been respected here. If we came down, we opened up at that region, we lost it for a bit, reclaimed it and held it for quite a time down here. We've now come up and essentially reversed this overall trend. And for me, pull back into this area, basically that 93, and let's just really call it 104. 104 is more of the local area. I'd be looking for this week personally, just to see if we get a little buy the dip opportunity here. And then losing that region, I would say the bigger opportunities back at 93. But the overall sentiment and thesis is that we're going to go higher. I've been tracking this region for, obviously the entire time. And the whole idea was, especially when we came and swept this region here, is that we would end this range essentially with a break to the upside, targeting 135,000.
Okay, so you've got a 135 upside. Are you saying this would maybe be by end of year, or you like this during the summer?
Honestly, so I utilize a lot of harmonic patterns, which is a shout out to Harmonic Trader on that. He's an incredible person and got a really great, basically a whole strategy wrapped around this. And I'll highlight this here. It's basically a sequence of Fibonacci's. And the reason I say that is because, once again, just kind of looking at this in a simple form, when we had this, slow grind down here, especially after this, the way we wicked down back in this region, there's a potential setup, and it's not something that we can necessarily marry right this minute, but it is something I've been tracking, and it's known as the AB equals CD pattern. And once again, this is just a sequence of Fibonacci. So off of this run up here, you'll see these areas right here. And this is just a 0.618 or a gold pocket retracement to the downside. And then from here, you get an expansion level. And a lot of times, once again, when you get these just really slow grinds is when they start to kind of appear in this region. And from here, it gives us that launch area. It's not the only reason I'm targeting 135. That's also a Fibonacci expansion area up in this region as well, right at that 132, 135.
Okay.
And if I had to put a time frame on it, I'm measuring this just in a symmetrical pattern here, where looking at how long it took us to get from A to B, and then basically just projecting that off of the C point to see how long it may take us to get up to D, and that is in this summer, coming in about September of 2025.
That's pretty significant. I think when you look at some of the trading patterns that we have seen around previous cycles and what we're seeing right now with Bitcoin, which has kind of broken a lot of the kind of the 4-year analysis. Many of that has been led for obvious reasons, everything from regulation, a political position now with the new administration. And then we also see some macro pressures that are changing up in terms of the bond market and all that. So I might agree with you. I'm a little bit more aggressive going into the end of the year, so we'll see how that plays out. But I do like your number there on 135. Let's talk a little bit about Ethereum. And I want to lead off with a clip, and this will kind of frame it up for much of our audience. We've talked about this company before, and there is a stock out there, and I think you guys will remember SharpLink Gaming. We talked about this. There's some indication it's kind of the new micro strategy for Ethereum. Here is Joe Lubin going a little bit more into what they're up to. Take a look.
About $425 million worth of Ether initially. They're very excited to stake it, to restake it, hypothetically. We'll look to do some of those things, and we can do so much more. Imagine a strategy like this, tokenizing a portion of their equity, making it available in a popular wallet, potentially. Token-gated perks, one could imagine. Again, this is very hypothetical. Prediction markets could be relevant. Any of the companies in the orbit of this company could offer perks or privileges in different kinds of contexts. I'll say no more on that front.
Do you have what it takes? Can you become the Michael Saylor of Ethereum?
I don't think I need to answer that question directly. Yes, I'm going to be very loud and consistent. For a couple of years, we were in a blackout period because the SEC was trying to pin this scheme to Americans on consensus. The Ethereum ecosystem is back in a pretty big way.
All right, so ETH has been one of those laggards. Everybody always yelling to the mountaintops on ETH, ETH, ETH. But it has struggled, obviously, especially as a layer one, for many reasons. Gas fees have laid into this, obviously regulation, et cetera. When you look at Ethereum right now, is this something that you feel is just setting up for a big run here? What do you look like on your charts?
Yeah, so Ethereum is actually my biggest bet in crypto personally. So I'm glad that we're talking about it today. So I have a couple of things that really lead into it. And just as of locally, ever since we basically topped around that 4,000, 4,100 back in the end of the year last year, and we just kind of slowly, grinded down. I've been posting that this was one of those basically, like a stairs down and then a potential elevator up situation, which a lot of times we get that on the reverse side. We get these slow grinds up and then something drop, CPI day, a PPI day, a Fed meeting, something occurs, something between Trump and Elon, right? And you get those really quick moves down, just kind of wipe out some leverage and liquidity. And it was kind of a reverse setup here locally on ETH. And for me, just to kind of showcase how strong it actually is still holding at the moment, at least, is that we pushed up, and I have, once again, just a couple of areas here. When we came down, we ended up giving up 2 years of gains, which is, insane to think about, and just in a couple months time frame. But we came down and we took out the 2023 lows here, and then from there we got that really nice push up here pretty aggressively. If you look at things like the EMAs, 200-day and the 50-day EMAs, you can see how we're coiling up right now for a potential golden cross, right, where they come up and you get that little bullish momentum continuation. That's a lagging indicator, most of the time at times. But for me, I am looking at this as pretty strong right here and pretty bullish to be holding above this level I have marked, which is the quarterly pivot, which is the high time frame. It's just the average of price of last quarter. So 90 days average here, holding it pretty nicely. It was also our 382 retracement. So if you just take a simple Fibonacci retrace from the high to low here, you can see that the 382, which is a normal area you'd look for the rejection if we came to it. But since then, we pretty much just reclaimed. We've been holding above it for multiple days. This has been weeks at this region now, just kind of swirling around this area. So I at least anticipated to push up to this $3,100 in the coming weeks here. But overall, on a higher time frame, ETH is, like I said, probably my biggest play, my biggest bet. Not to say that there's not going to be other winners in the market that are going to do better, but if you're like, for myself, I'm looking for something to invest some size in, something that's got maybe a little bit more, not predictability, but a little bit more trustable, that'll be around in a few years. Obviously, it's like one of the only other with an ETF approved. So to me, anything with the ETF logos is what I think, if we ever got a .com era bubble, that what will hopefully still make it through. But the biggest reason that I look to ETH, and just to kind of zoom out a little bit here, is this is very similar to what we actually saw recently or over the years with some things like XRP, where we have multiple year ranges. I mean, this is pretty cut and dry. You can see that we've been just ranging around in this region. So obviously we got the support off the lows. We're holding right now. $3,100 is kind of that next stair step. But eventually when we do break through this region, the all-time high, that's a multi-year range now with a multi-year all-time high with a ton of buildup right here. This is something that can really get out of hand in a hurry. And 7,500 to 8,500, I think, is a modest target after we see anything of that nature. Truly, I target a bit higher. But we'll take it, kind of as it comes. And the other reason, aside from just looking at overall ranging, is when I look at the ETH versus BTC pair. And this is, once again, on a harmonic setup here, which is a sequence of Fibonacci's, has a very specific set of ratios to it, a very specific set of rules that apply to it. And this is on a weekly time frame now. This is a very bullish structure. This is a 6-year-long bullish reversal pattern that we basically printed here, with a pretty good reaction right at the low, almost spot on. Time-wise, same thing. If I was to look at this in a symmetrical pattern, which is very important for this setup as well, the timing aligns with it. And for this, it kind of goes back to your point of the 4-year cycle theory, where I truly believe that is not anymore, at least from what we are used to in the past. I think that this is the crypto market as a whole, I think, is following along with the housing market cycle, the 18 to 20-year housing market cycle that in theory is, continues to go up until about 2027 to 2029. And this overall idea here actually points us to a potential ETH over BTC rally. That if we took 6 years to print this setup, it's not going to get there overnight. I'm looking at least a year and a half before we get to some of these targets up here, which doesn't necessarily mean it has to be an overall, bull run, bull market, altcoin season the whole time. Obviously, on the way down, we had some little pops. But this does give me inkling that ETH outperforms Bitcoin in the next coming 15 to maybe 36 months here.
Interesting. Well, I think there's a lot of people that are kind of looking at what we haven't seen just yet. Joseph Lubin was kind of point blank by the bankless guys in reference to, could he become the Michael Saylor of ETH? Could we start to see a company like, SharpLink and others starting to really leverage their treasury to hold more Ethereum, which would be, being a publicly traded company, would start to open up some potentials to where you could have people leveraging on the two assets, much like what we do with, or what we see on Bitcoin with MicroStrategy. I want to go to Pompliano because he gets into this, and there's kind of a variety of his opinion. Obviously, he's a big Bitcoin guy, but I want to play this, and then we'll back it up with a couple of other items. Let's take a look.
Is Ether the best blockchain network to carry it on? Can it be carried on a Bitcoin blockchain? See, I'm telling you, I'm a bit in the wood.
Look, there's a number of different stable coins that have different kind of twists to them. So if you look at Tether, for example, Tether has really said, what we want to do is we want to take the US dollar, which is one of the best product market fit products ever created in human history, and we want to bring it to people in the emerging world. They have something like over 400 million users. I think they're gaining 30 million users per quarter. Just crazy numbers. $13 billion in profit, over $85 million in profit per employee. Amazing business. Circle has said, well, let's go and actually be the U.S. regulated financial institution and try to go get distribution through exchanges like Coinbase and others. So both of them are attacking a market from two different ends, and I think that both will end up having a business. But then you also get a number of stable coins that say, well, what if we take the interest that we're earning from the treasuries that we're holding and we start to return that back to some of the holders? And you get all these different twists, and we'll see what ends up happening.
Yeah, and obviously he didn't lead that call, or the interview there is that, both tokens, those stablecoins riding on ERC20, Ethereum. This will play into a lot of that. Ethereum, this is just a headline here, but now setting up for no longer hype. So we could see some real world uses. This is coming in from Bernstein, who's been an analyst on this. Now we're seeing everything from Robinhood. Obviously we've seen many scenarios around this that will pair up what ETH could do in this cycle with Bitcoin, possibly even getting up around 150 or even 200K. When you look at your really bull case for Ethereum, and you said that you felt that this is a very big play and a positive play for you, what is your super bull case on Ethereum, let's say in the next 12 months?
12 months. So, like I said, like with my outlook there, with the 4-year cycle, everybody thinks 4-year cycle, or traditionally the 4-year cycle would end this year, right? And towards the end of the year. So we're talking June this time next year, and that actually does line up with kind of what I've been outlining as well, where we see a little bit of more lengthier time frame where the altcoins, in my eyes, I've been saying it's like they may see a higher and longer run, and ETH is going to potentially be leading that charge.
Okay.
I would honestly say I think ETH is truly going to surprise everybody. I really do think that. I feel like everybody targets the 7,500, 85, maybe 10,000 is kind of like I think everybody's really scared to kind of go any higher than that in the theory, which obviously for good measure, we should be, very cautious. And in the past, even myself, I had like some much higher target areas and they didn't play out, of course. And I think that those timeframes really, put everybody into the overcautious place now. And when I look at things in the sense of, instead of that 4-year cycle, I'm looking at things to where like we are in the midst of the last face melting rally in all assets, housing, stock. I mean, if you look around, it makes tons of sense when you see like NVIDIA and all the indices and everything kind of all-time highs at continuously. And so to answer your question in a longer version there, I could see honestly $20,000 and $30,000 ETH.
Oh my goodness!
In 12 months from now, I'd say probably in the $15,000 area, but
a 15K
the
ETH
15
in 1 year.
months, yeah.
Wow. I haven't heard that one in a 20 to 30. Now, obviously, if ETH continues its growth in terms of how this goes forward. So Paul, would you take a strategy of positioning right now, if you were a Bitcoin holder and saying, okay, I want to ride the best opportunity, would you go ahead and maybe exit Bitcoin and move into Ethereum based on the current trade market?
Hindsight, obviously 2020. I wish I would have took all my Ethereum and put it into Bitcoin in 2022.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
When we were at the low there, and then now unloaded everything back into ETH, because especially since we got pretty much to the same levels. But yeah, when you look at Bitcoin, I think that we can all agree. I mean, even if Bitcoin went to some astronomical levels, 600, 700, 800, a million. I mean, you're talking multiples of this point of from today, 7x, 10x, which is still amazing returns. I think that. It depends on how you are as an investor, because there's some people that are just Bitcoin maxis that are afraid to let go and then just kind of miss that continuation up. I am in the camp that Bitcoin does still continue higher, potentially a 2-3x from here, I think is not unheard of, especially, over the next coming years. But yes, I think the multiplier is the risk of a bigger multiplier and return on investment at the moment with a $2,500 ETH is going to outweigh the Bitcoin price, or you probably at least have the same opportunity, because once again, even the $7,500, $8,500 target point is a 2-3x from here. So that puts the equivalent of holding Bitcoin until 300.
Exactly, and ETH is in a position right now, I think, for a lot of people who are dollar cost averaging in, even if they were in early on Ethereum. But you
Yeah.
got to look at some of the outflows that we've seen on Bitcoin, especially on the ETF. This is kind of interesting because Ethereum is also seeing inflows right now, and that's something we have not seen. Let me jump over to that chart just to show you. So here's the inflows on ETH right now on the ETF. So continuing to flow up, positive. If you take a look at Bitcoin, it has been good, but here recently, over the last few weeks, has started to slip away on the ETF side. So I don't know if this is something that we are
Interesting.
seeing more institutional investors taking a look at, or if we're seeing maybe people positioning against Bitcoin based on what we're seeing around the Bitcoin ETH trade. So there is a lot to watch right now on this. Let's talk a little bit about Base. Base did a big announcement. Obviously, if you're thinking Base, the token you want to watch is Optimism. They're saying next week is going to be huge. Don't know what that is meaning, but where we're seeing optimism, if you think about this, Superstacks is already starting to see a lot more volume. And when you look at optimism right now and the potential, we'll take a look at that chart. What is your opinion on this? Especially if you're trying to trade a layer 2, if it has the same kind of run potentially as an Ethereum. Where do you like optimism?
Optimism is at, basically at lows, right? So, similar, Ethereum, I guess, is too, to some degree when you look at it across the last couple of years. But yeah, optimism is completely at a position where if we get a little spark, a little ignition here, this thing has a lot of room to run.
Yeah.
And I can share the chart on this too, if you'd like. And I've just honestly got a very simple outlook on optimism. Once again, higher time frame here, weekly time frame. We're trading once, down here around the June 2022 lows, and I've got a fixed range volume profile pulled up here, and this is all I'm doing here is I'm pulling the overall range data based on volume, and I'm highlighting the value area. So this is just 70% of all the volume that took place. We're living outside of that right now. So if you were looking at this as almost like an RSI, you can consider this very oversold. All you need to see a little bit of confirmation for more upside at the moment is getting into this range, which is a hot minute away from us. It's about 50% move to the upside just to get about almost back to $1. And then from here, we've got, I'll just look for a range rotation at that point. We have an untapped average of price. So this just on a mean reversion play, when you're looking at things like the 200-day moving average and some of these other, EMAs and those average returns, when we just, snap back to them, this is the average of price from last year. It does not move, so it's set. And it's very likely we come back to that, usually the following session. So in this case, this is last year's average. This is likely we get to that this year at some point. That sits up at about 256. And that's just a simple just move that takes us back into nowhere we haven't been. So, and then once you get through this region, if we come up and start claiming $3, like I said, I think that, just from where we are now, we got a lot of overhead way to come into. And I think that she's really got some room to run.
Well, you have to kind of consider optimism almost in unison with what's going on with Ethereum, because there's going to bleed off into that ecosystem. We're going to see some movement around that. Another one to watch, of course, when you think about the ETH ecosystem is Uniswap. Now, Uniswap, the Clarity Act, which we talked about last week on the show here, this could really get things moving for DeFi. It's almost considered maybe the Uniswap Act. And when you look at Uniswap and its potential right now, is this one that you currently hold, and would you put it in your portfolio for the next, say, 12 months?
I actually don't hold any at the moment, but I would consider it. And it's interesting because if you've been in the space for a couple of years, or at least throughout 2021, we remember the time frame where Uniswap, PancakeSwap, 1inch, all these DeFi platforms and exchanges really were. They got. You can see right here they had monster runs. And then pretty much had given it back up, and now you've gotten this just complete sidestep. I hate to bring it up again, but the best example is XRP, right? We all know what happened to XRP. We just had a 600-700% move and consolidating now, and I think we'll see even more upside through there. But the same deal happened here. You get this huge move to the upside, you kind of come back, you consolidate for quite some time. I have a couple of things pulled up here. This is just a simple Fibonacci retracement, so just in the simple price action that we see just time and time again. You want to see that 0.382. That's the first major area you want to see flipped. We came up and actually tagged that perfectly back in the end of last year, and then once again back down to our point of control, that the highest volume area that's been traded here. And overall, we could just really say that we've just been ranging in this region. basically at the lows, similar to optimism, which we were just looking at. So in the sense of risk versus reward, once again, everything in this market is not going to have explosive moves, like they probably have in the past when there was much less coins and much more, a little bit more money to go around for the smaller amount of coins. There's millions of coins now, so not everything's going to be a huge winner. But when I look at things like this, if I was going to pick something for a year to hold on to, it would be something that, yes, has not popped quite yet, that also has some of the more fundamentally positive things coming. I think that on a scale of risk management, yes, by all means, this would be something I would put in my portfolio for the next 12 months.
Yeah, and I think the thing that a lot of people overlook is we have not really seen a market structure bill come to light. And when that does happen, once we see the stablecoin bill come in, I think we'll most likely see a market structure bill come together. And as we see that, it means that we're going to see, I think, at least some clarity around DeFi. And if you think Ethereum is going to move, you have to consider the biggest DeFi platform out there on Ethereum, and of course that being one of them, being Uniswap. So we're going to definitely get Paul back on to cover some more tokens for you guys. Definitely let us know down in the comments what you guys think. By the way, if you are not in the Diamond Circle, make sure and get in on all of that. You can do that very easily, and it's absolutely free. Use the link down below to get started. And of course, follow me on X, @PaulBaron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.